Welcome to the November episode of NUN Local, the podcast all about Netherthorpe, Upperthorpe and Neepsend. In today's episode, I've got 3 brilliant interviews for you. The first one is with Sally Reader from FixMyStreet. If you have ever wondered what to do about a pothole in the area or fly tipping or an abandoned car, and you didn't know who to call, Sally tells us about a free app that really does make it simple to fix your street. And then I talked to Karen Perkins, who is one of the organisers of Sustainability Netwalking, which is happening in Neepsend in November. And finally, I have a chat with Anders from Kelham Island and Neepsend Walks, talking about 2 walks around Neepsend that he's planning this month. One looking at the history of the area and one looking at the art around the area. There's honestly loads to learn, and do listen up for his favourite Neepsend fact. It is genuinely fascinating. Wherever you're listening to NUN Local, make sure you get access to every future episode by signing up at nunlocal.news, where you can be informed every time there's a new episode. Episodes come out on the 1st of every month, and signing up at nunlocal.news will make sure you don't miss anything. But first of all, here is Sally Reader from FixMyStreet. FixMyStreet is an independent web service run by charity mySociety, and it makes it easier for anyone to report a problem in their local area. It means you can report things without having to try and work out who on earth is responsible for them, and without having to wait on hold on the council phone line, which we've all done. The FixMyStreet website says all you have to do is type in a UK postcode or let the site locate you automatically and describe your problem. Then we send your report to the people whose job it is to fix it. And at the time of writing, I can see on the website that 74,000 reports have been sent to Sheffield City Council alone through FixMyStreet. And when I look at the most recent ones submitted, people are reporting fly tipping, unsafe parking, rats, illegal parking, and a pothole, all of which are really either annoying or even dangerous problems that the app is helping people to resolve. Sally Reader works for Society Works, which is part of mySociety. So first of all, Sally, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. It's nice to chat to somebody different for a change.
I bet. So how did the idea for FixMyStreet come about?
So mySociety, the charity, was founded by a guy called Tom Steinberg. And about 17 years ago, Tom was working in London, and as he was walking around quite regularly, he passed this phone box, and it was forever being vandalised. It had graffiti on it and it wasn't working. And he thought to himself, I probably should report this to somebody. But then realised he didn't really know who to report it to. So should he report it to the phone company? And he wasn't even sure who that was. Should it be the council? Should it be someone else? And he got thinking, actually, this shouldn't be that difficult. I should be able to report a problem on the street in a really simple way. So, we're talking graffiti, fly tipping, potholes, that sort of thing. And more importantly, not only should it be easy to do, you as a person shouldn't need to have to work out who was responsible for fixing it. There should be a system that was in place that could tell from where you were on a map what authority was responsible for that. And you could report your issue and it would send it off to the council. And that is where the seed of FixMyStreet came from.
It's genius. I mean, it's something I use personally and have for several years. But mySociety has other tools as well as FixMyStreet. You can find out who your MP or your local councillor is and contact them through writetothem.com. You can keep an eye on how politicians vote on theyworkforyou.com. And you can read thousands of freedom of information requests and responses on whatdotheyknow.com, which as a journalist, I can tell you is invaluable. Why did you choose a tool like FixMyStreet to create and maintain as well? Why did this project feel important to you?
I think it very much fits in with our whole mission as the mySociety charity, which is to empower people to engage in their society in a simple way by being able to use some very straightforward technology. So we think that people should be able to look after the place in which they live, and it shouldn't be difficult. It shouldn't be difficult for you. It shouldn't be difficult for the responsible authority. It should just be more straightforward. So when we first launched Fix My Street back in 2007, the world was quite a different place in terms of technology. So since then, we've been building and improving the Fix My Street site to keep up with all the new technology. We also take feedback on board. So if people come up with a good suggestion of how something could be better or something that can be added, we're continually making improvements to it. We know that the public are the eyes and ears on the ground, particularly within the community that they live. We also know that local councils, they can't be everywhere at once. They can't spot every single new fly tip. They can't spot every single overgrown hedge that's stopping you from getting down the pavement. And we know at the moment that councils are really struggling for funding, which means their resources are even more stretched than they ever were. So being able to allow people from the community to make reports in an easy, simple way is even more vital. We've done quite a lot of research into all of this, as you might imagine. And we know that people are a lot more likely to engage with authorities if they know that the report that they are making actually makes a difference. And one of the things that Fix My Street does, as you said at the beginning, is that you can see all the other reports that have been made in your area. So you can see what other people are reporting. And crucially, you can see when that problem's been resolved as well. So there is a clear action there. Person made a report, council did a thing, issue was solved, which just makes it a really valuable tool for communities to interact not only with other people in their communities and see what they're doing, but also with the councils. And we have the ability. So if you report an issue, so if you report a fly tip and a couple of days later you walk down the street and you see that fly tip's been removed, you can go back onto Fix My Street and you can actually mark that report as fixed yourself, so other people can see that something's happened. We also work with some councils directly, some more than others. So the ones that we work with, we can integrate Fix My Street with a lot of their back-end processes to make it easier for them to give you specific updates. So they might they might say to you, yes, we know this is a problem, but it's going to take us a couple of days to fix it. And then they'll tell you when it's fixed it. And a step on from that is that some councils even have their own versions of Fix My Street, which means that residents get to report even more issues. And the map does kind of even more clever things, like in some cases, you can even kind of pick the street light that you want to report a problem with. So it just makes it's just about making it super easy for everybody and keeping it all in line with the technology of the moment, basically.
Yeah. As somebody who uses the app, I can tell people, first of all, that it is really simple and straightforward. You're not replacing one complicated process with a different complicated process. So how can listeners use Fix My Street if they see a problem in the area? And also, what kind of problems can they report?
Yeah, so the site is UK wide, so you can report any area, but obviously with your areas like Netherthorpe and Upperthorpe and Neepsend, you can specifically concentrate on that area. So if you're walking around and you see a fly tip or you see a pothole or something like that, there's a couple of different ways that you can make a report. So one of the simplest ways is to use your mobile phone. So you can, if you're able to, make a report there and then when you're stood in front of the problem that you've found. There is an app which you can download from all the app stores, which is just called Fix My Street. Or you can just report it on the website as well. You absolutely don't have to download the app. It's whatever your personal preference is. If you are there, stood in front of the thing that you found, you can use a thing called Use My Current Location. So using GPS, it automatically knows where you are. So it doesn't matter if you don't know the name of the street or the postcode. I know I wander around my area. I haven't got a clue what most of the roads are called, but I don't need to know. If you're not able to make a report at that time, because, it's not always convenient, you can then go onto the site and make that report later. You will need to know the location. So like the street name or the postcode, or even if you're not sure, you could type in an area like Netherthorpe and then kind of zoom into the map and find out the street that you were on. The other thing you can do as well, if you are using the app, the app has an offline reporting function. So we all know that sometimes your 3G, 4G, 5G is not quite what it should be. So what you can do is you can start making your report, which it will save as a draft. And then when you're back in an area of connectivity or on the Wi-Fi, you can continue to make your report.
Ah, clever.
So yeah, so it's basically, having no 3G data should not be the blocker for you not to make a report. So the location is the key thing, obviously. Once you're happy with your location, it will take you to the map and you can see the location on the map. So you can move the pin up and down a bit if you want to put it in a specific place. You can also see all the other reports that have been made in that area. So what we do is we give people a selection of categories. So in the Sheffield area, quite a few categories, so I won't list them all out, but things like car parking, dog fouling, fly posting, fly tipping, potholes, street lights, traffic lights, that sort of thing. So you pick the category that is most relevant to the thing that you're trying to report. If you have been able to take a photo of it, then that's great. You can upload a photo because it's pretty useful for the councils to be able to see sometimes, particularly with fly tipping, like how much stuff is there.
Yeah.
And also, if you're trying to work out whether somebody's reported it or not already, sometimes it's easier to tell from a picture. If you've got a photo, you can upload that. If you haven't, it doesn't matter. You can just carry on without it. And then you just need to provide some really basic information about the issue. So you don't have to create an account. You don't have to put all your personal details in. You just give the details of the issue that you want to report. If you want to leave your contact details, you can, but you absolutely don't have to. And basically, once you've done that, and it shouldn't take more than a couple of minutes, sometimes we ask you to confirm your report, just to check that you're not a bot or something. And once that's done, off it goes to the council that's responsible for dealing with it. Council get the notification, it goes on the map, everyone can see what's happened. That's it.
Yeah, it's great. And I've noticed that the litter picking group in Upperthorpe report the bags they collect using FixMyStreet.
Oh, cool.
They leave them by a particular bin and then take a photo. And do you find that many community groups tend to use the tool this way?
Yeah, and we absolutely love about hearing community groups as well. Although we kind of say this is for residents, obviously it's for groups as well, and it can be a really valuable tool. So recently, last year, we spoke to a group of litter pickers who were in Birmingham, and they were finding that as they were going around doing their litter picks, they were spotting other issues as well. So they were using FixMyStreet to report the other issues as they were going around. We know in some places neighbourhood watch groups use FixMyStreet as well in a similar kind of way. And they really like it because if one of the neighbours has already reported something, they can see that so they don't have to report it again. And Oxfordshire, one of the councils that we work really closely with, they actually train a team of volunteers themselves that they call the super users.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trained by the council to look out for things like blocked drains and damage to curbing and that kind of thing. And they learn how to use FixMyStreet and how to describe what the problem is. So when the report gets to Oxfordshire, they then know how to prioritise it all and they can deal with all the most urgent problems first. So yeah, loads of people use it. And we love hearing from people as well, because often we don't know unless people tell us.
Yeah, because when you look at the previous reports on the website, it doesn't say this was reported by Philippa. But if some people add that as a note, like the Upperthorpe litter pickers do, so I guess there's a lot going on that you just don't know the context of.
Yeah, and we always make it clear that, we don't publish people's personal details on the website and things. So even if you do leave your name, we never publish that unless you tell us you want us to. So yeah, it's just great to hear how other groups use it, and we can share it with other people as well and say, hey, this community group's doing this thing, maybe that's something you might like to try. So it's very much a community of users as well as communities of residents.
As I said, have been reporting, I think, always fly tipping using FixMyStreet since 2022. I scrolled back through my account to have a look. I have the app on my phone. As I said, it's really easy to use. And one thing I like is that I get an instant email acknowledgement from the council when I submit a report. Often before I've had a chance to close the app, the email is there in my inbox saying it's been reported. Is there anything else you think people need to know about FixMyStreet?
I guess the important thing to remember is that the Fix My Street map is quite clever, and it knows, it has a lot of knowledge already programmed into it. So, for example, if you're in another part of Sheffield, if you're out towards Meadowhall or somewhere like that, which is near the M1 and the M80, those bigger roads are obviously not looked after by the council. They're looked after by National Highways. Now, of course, not everyone's going to know that. Not everyone's going to know how to contact National Highways. But when you use Fix My Street, it doesn't matter because the map knows. So if you click on a National Highways road, it will just send it to National Highways. And in some areas of the country where you've got like double tier and triple tier councils, that's obviously really helpful because it's quite often quite hard to work out whether it's the county council or the city council or the parish council. So all of that is included in the map. So you should never feel that you need like a lot of knowledge before making reports. All you need to know is where you are. That is the key thing. And the other thing, you know, for anybody making reports on Fix My Street, we really like it if people make a report and then they notice that their report has been dealt with, that they can mark it as fixed, because it shows people what's going on. With the councils that we work with directly, they do tend to update the reports on a more regular basis. But it's basically, you know, the way the system works is you get more out of it the more you put into it. And we obviously work with councils to try and encourage them to put on as much updating on those reports as we possibly can. But you can help with that as well. And I guess the other message is, you know, just have a go.
Yeah. So where can people go to find out more if they're listening and they're sick of fly tipping at the end of the road or a pothole outside their house? Where do people go to get involved?
All you need to do is head off to our website, which is www.fixmystreet.com. Or if you want to go straight for the app, then you just go to wherever you get your apps from and type in Fix My Street and it will find it for you. And there's, as well as being able to make reports, there's FAQ pages and there's help pages. So you can have a bit of a read about it if you want to learn a bit more about it, as well as just reporting your fly tips.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Sally Reader.
Thank you. It's been lovely talking to you.
Do you have a story about Netherthorpe, Upperthorpe or Neepsend you want to tell? Find our contact details at nunlocal.news or say hi on social media.
Karen Perkins is a business and life coach, and along with Sheffield Sustainability Network and Sheffield Social Enterprise Network, she runs Sustainability Netwalking events. The next one is in Neepsend, so she's here to tell us all about Sustainability Netwalking. So what is Sustainability Netwalking?
Well, we used to do a networking event. We started a networking event in Sheffield, which used to meet every month about 10 years ago, because we really enjoyed being out in the fresh air and it seemed to help people get to know each other and introduce themselves. And most of us like to be in nature. And then it sort of naturally evolved into a sustainability networking event because we all were bringing more sustainability practices into our work. And there was more demand for people to know about sustainability, and people are a bit vague about what it is. So it's really nice to be able to come on a walk with people from all different types of sustainable business or a business introducing sustainability to sort of swap tips and make collaborations. And when you're walking side by side, it seems to be very relaxed, and the conversations that we have seem to be really good. And it's not pressured. It's not like one of these high power networking events. It's gentle. You can talk to who you want. You can follow it up afterwards. We always go for a coffee in a nice local business coffee place afterwards if people want to hang around. And they also suggest venues and topics. So it's a good way to meet people from all different sectors in Sheffield and just have a gentle walk. We try and make them as accessible as possible. Sometimes it's not very easy, but we do try. And we'll talk to someone about what they need if they want to come along. Probably boots and wellies are a good thing because we do go into the parks and along the canals and things like that. So, yeah.
And I've been to a few networking events in my time and generally find them deeply awkward. it feels like a very inauthentic situation where everybody's just plugging their business in every conversation and you can't actually make connections. So what makes networking different to more traditional networking in that respect?
People sort of choose to come because of their interest. They've all got a general interest in the sustainability aspect. And also, we have a lot of people coming who are starting up social enterprises and community interest companies with Sheffield Social Enterprise Network. So they come along and they know that they're going to meet people who've got sort of similar interest. We do like an introduction at the beginning and quite clear. Just say who you are, what you're interested in, and maybe a sustainability win. So we try and keep it really short because there's nothing more annoying than going to a networking meeting and having to listen to somebody drone on about their business when actually you just want to get talking to people. I do make sure that I talk to people a lot, and we have people from the Enterprise Network and Sustainability Sheffield come along, and we just try and mix around and sort of make sure people mix. I do love talking to people, so I do try and sort of move around and try and talk to them. If anyone's by themselves, introduce them, find out their sort of common interests. If anybody wants to talk to me beforehand about any issues they've got or they're a bit nesh about going on a walk or networking, I'm very happy to have a chat with them and just introduce them to someone, get them talking. So it's a very relaxed way of doing it, and we see all the sort of nature in Sheffield, etc., when we go on these walks, so that you're in nature, you're relaxing, but it sort of promotes the conversations, and quite a lot of good ideas come out of it. For example, I think Sheffield College have been to a number of our walks. We've noticed they've started up some sustainability employment training for people in heat pumps and sustainability issues for their business. So they're sort of spin-offs which are helping adult learning in Sheffield, but obviously because you can talk to lots of people from different backgrounds with interest, they'll all give you their view, especially over coffee. People are quite open and sharing in it, so it's a nice place to come to.
Yeah.
We do try and tell local community organisations as well, anyone's welcome.
And I feel like because like this November one, you're walking along the River Don, it's automatically a less artificial and awkward situation because you're walking along the River Don and you might go, oh, is that a kingfisher? There are things happening around you, so there's not this pressure to just be a good representative of your business or be on the ball. It's quite a human way to interact with people, I think.
I think it is, because I usually give a bit of a commentary about what we're seeing, because you might see the odd phlegm drawing on the walls, or people have got different knowledge about nature and different things. They'll see a factory over the other side of a fence and say, oh, they've got this process going on. So it does get people talking. I mean, on the walk, I don't want to spoil it for people, but there are loads of small businesses en route. There's things you'd never think of seeing. There's old industrial heritage. There's potential development at the Cannon Brewery Works. We can talk to people about opportunities. They tend to sort of meet people from the area which they haven't met before and build sort of collaborations, but it's all sort of natural. Then there's all the art, which obviously I like. And we can tell them about things that are happening. So I think there's a group called Kinker, which is Kelham Island Community Association and Neepsend. And we've had information from them in the past. I'm not sure if they're coming to this one, but sometimes they'll come along and they'll tell people how they can get involved. It's a very rich tapestry in a walk. But I think maybe you can go with a purpose to meet sort of someone who can answer the question that you want, but usually it happens organically.
Yeah, I spoke to Kinker in the first episode of this podcast, and in this episode, people will also hear from Anders, who runs Walks Around Neepsend. This is clearly the Walks Around Neepsend episode, inadvertently. So who tends to come along to the networking events?
So There's people from different community groups. There's people from different social enterprises. There are people who are starting up their business or people who've been in it for a long time. Lots of experience and expertise. But I think what I have discovered about this particular networking is that people are very sharing and helpful, which is very nice when you're on a networking event, because it's nice to feel welcomed and you're not in competition. So it doesn't feel competitive. It's helpful. So we've seen people develop their businesses, and over the years how that's improved, and they'll give you tips on funding, and people have changed direction and they'll tell you how they did it. There are companies launching new products and they'll ask for your tips, or you can ask them how they did it. So again, it helps you develop your business in a friendly way. But I know that I think somebody who runs a gym in Kelham Island and a personal training service called Rory, he came to one of our walks, and I know that he's met lots of people through it, and he's developed various walks and all sorts of things. So it is nice to see what comes from it.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's quite exciting for people, because if they've not been to an area before, I'm a bit of a map nerd, so I do like exploring and going on interesting walks. So I will try and look for a good and interesting route, which might be scary because you're going up the side of a railway cutting, which you've never been up before. But that's exciting, and you can see different aspects of the landscape there. So the Neepsend walk's quite interesting if we get up towards End Cemetery and people go, I never knew there was a cemetery here before. And in that excitement, they'll be talking about all their other things that they're developing as well. So it sort of stimulates creativity, I would say, and chatting. It's not threatening when you're walking alongside somebody. It's not like being in one of these speed networking things. So hopefully it's relaxing but productive. Maybe 2 or 3, 4 miles, we do a sort of an hour's walk, half an hour out and back, so it's not too onerous. And then we meet for a coffee afterwards, and some people stay and some people don't. But that's all very relaxed. But we do try and go to new coffee venues, so patronize local businesses that have set up so that they get a bit of publicity as well. So it's all trying to weave it into the local community.
And speaking of local community, what made you choose Neepsend for the November walk? Because I know you move them around.
Because it's really interesting. I think one of the things was that there's new government funding going into the housing developments in Neepsend. So it's good to show people that site. And also they might not know the other sites. So we like to talk about those sorts of things because there could be opportunities in business for them. So what's going on the ground, how they can influence it to make sure they don't knock it down and build something vile. Can they keep the existing architecture? That's right. I think they should keep all those nice graffitis on the top of the tower on the cannon works. I've got loads of photos of that from the past. I'm quite keen to see those sorts of things. So the more you get people involved in an area, the more they can understand it. They don't know this. You can walk along the canal. They might be frightened to do it. So it's all those sorts of things that it's very interesting when we go on a walk. We always try and find something that surprises people.
And the sustainability aspect of it, is it that it is sustainability focused businesses that come along? Is it more that anybody can come along, but there's a general topic of sustainability? How does that play into it?
I think we wanted to create a sort of, I want to say safe, non-shaming network for somebody who wanted to come along and ask those questions like, how on earth do I get my business to be sustainable, and make some connections without having to go along with a business plan and a sustainability action plan. They can come along and find out some tips from people on how to make a start. So our sort of motto is just make a start. There's no shame in having a small start in making your business sustainable. Just do one thing, or pick up litter, or whatever you're going to do, just make a start. So I think that's what we try and encourage. So, some of them will have a fully integrated diversity, social inclusion, economic sustainability policy. Well, that's great, but everyone can always learn from everyone else. So you can say, well, which consultant did you use to help you do this? Or did Sheffield Sustainability Network help you do it? Where's free information? So if someone can't afford the information, we can signpost them to free stuff. If they can, we can help them talk about, from people's experience, which consultants were on the ball.
Yeah, and even like, where did you get plastic-free packaging for your products from? Anything like that, I imagine, is the kind of thing that somebody in that group will have an answer to.
Yeah, and that is very useful because it's a good shortcut. I mean, if you're opening a cafe or a coffee van or something, if you can talk to 3 people who've either done it or know someone who's done it, they'll have done the work for you, and they're all desperate to say how good this particular organisation that supplies things are, and they're very keen and enthusiastic to share their tips. So yeah, it is very useful. We usually ask people at the beginning to just share a sustainability win or a question that they want to ask. So, they can say that at the beginning whilst we go around the group. So it's all very informal, but we try and manage it so that everyone gets a say. If people want to join Sheffield Sustainability Network, they can just go to their website, sign up for the newsletter, and any events will just come forward from there. And the Sheffield Social Enterprises Network is a big organisation in Sheffield, which provides support, development programs, seminars, training, all sorts of things for people setting up a social enterprise type business. Again, they've got a website, and it's free to come on these as well, which is good.
Excellent. And if people want to find out about this specific event, I know it's on Eventbrite.
Yep, it's on Eventbrite. It's 9:15. We meet at 9:15, and we're meeting at Kelham Arcade Shopping Centre, which is Burton Road, where if anyone knows Depot Coffee, it's in that little bit there. And then we're going for a walk for about an hour, and we're coming back to Depot Bakery afterwards for a cup of coffee. And we usually finish about 11 by the time everyone's had a coffee. Some people stay longer. It's up to people how long they want to stay. There's buses to Neepsend, but you'll have to find out because they've changed the numbers recently. And there's on-street parking or the tram.
And that's on the 20th of November, yeah?
So that's Wednesday, the 20th of November. If you can't get to that one, we've got one on Wednesday, the 18th of December at Encliffe Park. And then we've even got one ready for January in Weston Park. It's amazing what you can find in those small areas that's interesting that people haven't noticed before. And then we have a programme through the year.
Excellent. Well, Karen, thank you very, very much. That's been really interesting.
Yep, well, it's nice to speak to you, and it's good to get the word out. And we just need to remind people to put your boots on, because walking boots, because the canal path can be a tiny bit muddy sometimes, but we're trying not to take you down a really muddy route.
Thank you.
Subscribe to the podcast at nunlocal.news or search for NUN Local on your favorite podcast player so you never miss an episode.
Kelham Island Walks offers 2-hour walks around Neepsend and Kelham Island to learn about the history, art, industrial past and current life in the neighbourhoods. You can learn about the architecture, the people and the stories of the area from a local resident and historian. Anders Hanson from Kelham Island Walks is here. So Anders, why did you start doing walks around Neepsend and Kelham Island?
So I did my first walk around 5 years ago. I've always been interested in local history, no matter where I've lived. I grew up in Sheffield, so I've always known quite a bit about Sheffield history, but have also lived in other places and also been interested to know a bit more about places that I've been in. But also, whenever I visited anywhere, I've always loved going on walking tours and thought that were a really good way of bringing a place to life. And often thought when I went on them, I thought, I'd love to do something like that. and wasn't sure it would ever happen. But then Sheffield University got in touch with the community group in Kelham Island because of an event they were doing, and they wanted to bring some people down to Kelham Island and asked if there was anybody that they knew who knew about the history of the area. And so I was suggested, and so I did my first walking tour then, which I really enjoyed doing and got some brilliant feedback from, and thought, well, maybe I should do this as a regular thing, and was just about to start. Then COVID came along, so it all went on hold for a bit. But when things started opening up, I started to put on some regular walks, and to begin with, it was I had sort of so much interest, and which possibly because people have been sort of shut up at home and so keen to go out and do things.
Yeah.
So I had to put on some extra walks for a while to cope with the demand. So that was really positive. I've also did things as part of the Heritage Open Days that happens every September when buildings open to the public that aren't normally open. And there's also always quite a lot of walks as part of that. And so I've then been doing them ever since. And now I do a mixture of public advertised walks that anyone can book onto, and also now increasingly getting quite a lot of private bookings of families, local companies. Both of the universities in Sheffield have done things with them. So it's been really positive. And from the one walk, I now offer the two different walks and also work with somebody to also offer a third as well. So if I could do this all the time, I would. But it's certainly something that I love doing and hoping it'll continue to grow.
And I've noticed on your social media, you get local people doing the walks and you get people who are visiting Sheffield doing the walks. It seems like a real mixture of people want to come along.
Yes, it's mainly local residents, or at least people from near Sheffield, even if they're not actually from Sheffield itself. I'm probably not so much actually people necessarily who live in the immediate area. I do get some people coming along, particularly people who've newly moved to Kelham and Neepsend, who are keen to know more about the area they're in. I also did have on one of the walks somebody who owns a factory in Neepsend who came along because he felt that he ought to know more about the history of the local area. But largely it's people from other parts of Sheffield. And yes, I get a few from people visiting the city. I had some people on a walk last weekend who were from Winchester, and they said the last time they came to Sheffield, they went out to the Peak District. So this time they thought they ought to do something that was a bit more urban. But I've also had a group from Sweden who were in Sheffield for the football, and they decided that they wanted to find something else that was on while they were here. I had a group recently from Germany, which was organised actually by somebody who was originally from Sheffield but has lived in Munich for the last 20 years and wanted to show people his home city.
Amazing. You've got some walks coming up in November, and on the 23rd of November, you've got an art and studios tour. First of all, who is Simon Wigglesworth Baker, which is a spectacular name?
Yes, so Simon is a local artist and sculptor. He lives in Neepsend. He's been part of Kelham Art Collective for a long time, who are based on Ball Street, and was one of their directors for a while. He's also a former art teacher, taught at Stocksbridge School. I think he may have also been at other schools in Sheffield. And he is also vice chair of the Kelham and Neepsend Community Alliance, so very much involved with the local community. And he, again, actually was just asked by somebody once if they would be able to do a tour of the area, talking about some of the art that you can see, some of which is street art, but also there's quite a bit of that isn't, other things that you can see in the area. So he just decided, as I was already running walks and already had a website set up, that I'd work with him so that he could put on walks more regularly to tell people sort of a slightly different side to the area. So I do the history and he does the art.
So what are some of the artworks people can see around Neepsend?
So probably some of the better known ones are, probably the best known one actually is the Pete McKee that's on Burton Road, of Frank the Dog. But there's also some others that I think are sort of quite interesting ones. There's on the front of Cutlery Works, you've got a mural which shows Mary Ann Rawson and Frederick Douglass. And Mary Ann Rawson was an anti-slavery campaigner who was from Sheffield. She was born in a house on Green Lane. So she's fairly local to the area. But there wasn't anything in the area remembering her. So the artist Katie Sett decided that she wanted to do a mural to her, and Cutlery Works were also keen to have something outside their building. So those are sort of perhaps for some of the, I suppose, fairly sort of conventional, if you like, street art that you get in the area. There's also things by Bubba 2000, who's done quite a lot in Sheffield. There's Flem has also got a piece of work on the riverside, which is a bit further along the river. But then you've also got things like there's some bronze plaques on the front of Green Lane Works in Kelham Island, which tell you quite a bit about the history of that building, which I also talk about on my Kelham Island walk, as well as being part of the arts tour. And they were designed by somebody called Alfred Stevens, or at least thought to be. Nobody seems to know for certain, but they tell you a bit about the history of the factory that was there. So it's an interesting insight into the history of the area, as well as just being a beautiful piece of art as well.
And as you said, not all of the artwork in Neepsend is street art. I'm a big fan of Church, Temple of Fun, and that is a fascinating work of art from start to finish. What do you know about the artwork in there? Yeah,
so on the Art Studios tour, that does go into Church. The art in there it's inspired by South American religious iconography. So that the wife of Ollie Sykes, who owns Church from the band Bring Me the Horizon, she's Brazilian, and so that was part of the inspiration for the art that's in there. So when you go around, you as well as the art itself, there's also a sort of a confessional booth in there as well. So it's trying to sort of create that sort of South American religious feel, which obviously fits with the name. But also the person who designed the building when it was built as a factory for the company Samuel Osborne, this was the only industrial building that he ever designed, a man called William Hale. But most of what he designed in Sheffield were churches. So that also all ties together, really.
That's really interesting. It speaks to the recovering Catholic in me. So I know you don't personally lead this particular tour, but what is a piece of art in Neepsend that listeners might not know about?
I'm going to pick two quite different ones. One of them is perhaps slightly low-key. People don't necessarily notice it maybe when they walk past, but it's on a utility box on the pavement on Neepsend Lane of a heron. So it fits quite nicely with the sort of natural history of the area as well. And the utility boxes that painted up all around Kelham and Neepsend were part of a project which Simon Wigglesworth Baker was also involved with. And so it's a way of trying to deter graffiti. So quite a lot of the utility boxes around the area have all been painted by different artists, many of them from Kelham Arts Collective, but also other artists from in and around this part of Sheffield. So I think that one is just a really lovely piece of art by somebody called Caroline McWilliams, who was also a local resident until fairly recently. But the other one I'd pick out, which people perhaps might not think about, is very different. So there's a set of lights on Penniston Road where the pedestrian crossing goes over near Globeworks. So beautiful piece of metalwork, and the design to look a little bit like flames, which fits a little bit with the industrial history of Sheffield. And it's by somebody called Paul Carruthers, who's done some other pieces of art in Sheffield as well. And I just think it's obviously something very practical because it's a light, but also it's this beautiful piece of metalwork, which again fits with the history of Sheffield.
Love it. I know the one you mean. It's it's quite, I don't even know. It stands out, and yet you can also completely walk past it without noticing it both at the same time.
Yeah. Yes.
So on Sunday, the 24th of November, is the Neepsend walking tour. And this walk brings to life how Neepsend grew from a small hamlet by the river to a thriving working class community. What can people expect to see on this tour?
So the tour starts off outside the Gardener's Rest, which is quite a convenient place because obviously a lot of people know the pub, but also that particular location was right in the middle of the old village of Neepsend. So unlike, say, Kelham Island, which just gradually grew across fields without there really having been an original sort of heart to it as a community, Neepsend always had the centre to the area. And so all the streets around there, the area where it sort of opens out in front of the Gardener's Rest, was the middle of that village of Neepsend. And the walk then goes from there, eventually crossing over Burton Road, Neepsend Lane, Harvest Lane. And what I try and do is just bring to life what the area was like. So it was an area which was really largely dominated by housing, actually, although it was the industry that came to the area that made the area grow, and in particular the railways coming down the valley in the 1840s. But I tried to give people a bit of a glimpse into what it was like living in Neepsend at that time, and it was a really thriving area with obviously lots of houses, but also lots of shops. That certainly Harvest Lane itself was a very busy shopping street. You had pubs, you had churches, there was a police station, the building which is still there now. It had its own cinema. There was also a swimming pool down at the far end, down towards Bridge Houses. So it was a really thriving community, and so it's changed a lot, and a lot of that housing only really disappeared in the 1960s, although there are a few of the houses still around, although not necessarily used as houses today. So it's just trying to bring to life what it was like to be in that part of the city. And I think although it's just over the river from Kelham Island, it's got quite a different history. And I know certainly some people said to me, oh, well, is there a lot in Neepsend to have a look at? And actually there are all sorts of things when you go out and look for them. So hopefully people come away from it with an idea of what Neepsend was like as an area as it was sort of developed over the years.
I liked on your website you call Neepsend Kelham Island's edgier twin.
Yes. I wondered whether that was maybe over-egging things a little, but I think it's not. Whilst I think Kelham Island has become more residential and become, I'm not sure sanitised is quite the right word, but it's certainly changed quite a bit as an area, whereas Neepsend still has, I like the fact that it still has the industry and the working factories and the buildings in between, also where people are living. And that's one of the things that drew me to the area in the first place.
Yeah, and just as there are new hospitality in particular type businesses popping up in Neepsend, there's still some of the makers who've been there for years.
Yeah, yes. And I mean, somebody I've got to know through doing the walks is the people who run Thomas Flynn, the saw manufacturer from Harvest Lane. And they're a company that has been in the area for just over 100 years, although not necessarily on that site. So they're a very sort of traditional Sheffield industry that is still operating there. It's been in the same family for a long time. Just along the road from there, you've got John Spur, which is now a company that makes cabinets. So they make things like the display cabinets you get in museums. And so it's one of those things that people don't necessarily think of Sheffield having, but the buildings are there, the factories there, but you may not know from outside what it is they do in them. And John Spur has been around for a long time, but that was an offshoot from a company called Stevenson Blake, who are a type foundry that were based on Upper Allen Street, so on the hill between Kelham Island and Sheffield University. So that's another company that's got quite a long history, and although they've changed what they've done over the years, the company is still thriving.
Yeah. And what does the tour tell attendees about modern day Neepsend?
So I think it'll give people a bit of an idea of how the area is changing, because people can see that some of the buildings that were once had one purpose have now been put to an entirely different use. So the walk ends at Alder Bar on Percy Street, but that was a building that started off as a polish factory and then has been through various other industrial uses, but is now a bar, which is a very 2024 use of a building in that area. And also, we also call it Yellow Arch Studios as well, which is another thing that's sort of helped raise the profile of Neepsend and the music industry in Sheffield. So I think people will see how the area has changed. But also, I think one of the buildings that I also call out is Rutland Hall on Hick Street, which started off life as a building designed to provide sort of social, sporting, cultural activities for working class people in the area, and as a way of sort of helping. And it was run for a while by somebody called Helen Wilson, who was also part of trying to improve the lives of people within the city. She was involved with a lot of other things within Sheffield. But now the company that's in there, the organisation is called Interchange, and their role is taking children who've been excluded from school and trying to put them on the right path. So it feels as though, although the organisations are different, there's also a bit of continuity as well. So the area's changed. Some things have changed completely, but other things actually maybe haven't changed that much.
Yeah, there's a thread running through it, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely.
And this may be an unfair question to somebody who's so full of Neepsend facts, but what's your favourite Neepsend fact?
I think, well, the one that when I tell people, they are surprised, and it's only a very sort of short thing as part of the walk, is one of the buildings that I point out is a company based on Rutland Way in Neepsend called HD Sports. And from the outside, it just looks like a warehouse, but it's a company that makes ice skates. They've been around for over 100 years in Sheffield. And in the Winter Olympics 10 years ago, every medal winner had ice skates that were made in that factory.
Wow.
And it's something that people might not think of Sheffield doing that sort of thing, but actually what are ice skates made of? They're made of steel. So that you can see how that industry grew up in Sheffield. And it's just a very ordinary looking building. And whenever I tell people about it, they're always, oh, I never knew Sheffield did things like that. So it's just taking something seemingly ordinary and making people realise that they're doing something extraordinary inside. So I think that's probably the main one, that because of just the reaction you get from people when you tell them about it.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I appreciate on your website that you include information for disabled people who might want to come along. Why was that important to you?
I want everybody to feel welcome to come on the walks. I don't want anyone to feel that they can't come along for any reason, really. But I think also it's partly also something I realised when I started doing the walks is how some people did ask me questions before they booked, whether they would be okay to go on the walk if they perhaps weren't able to walk as well. But also, I have done a walk where somebody was in a mobility scooter, and that really made me realise quite how many places don't have drop curbs, and places that I might normally cross the road wouldn't work with people if they've got more limited mobility. So it was partly just to recognise that and make sure people know that they're welcome, but also if people have any particular needs when they go on a walk, then get in touch with me and I can tweak the route or things like that just to make sure it works for them.
Yeah, as a disabled person, well, it would be amazing if everything was perfectly accessible. I think most of us just want the information so we can make our own judgment.
Yes.
And if the information is there and easy to find, it saves a lot of ongoing, constantly kind of emailing people. And so, yeah, no, I always appreciate that. So if people want to come along to the Arts and Studios tour on the 23rd or the Neepsend Walking Tour on the 24th, or just to find out more about what you do, where can they do that?
So the best thing to do is to go to my website, which is kelhamislandwalks.com. And on there, you've got the dates of all the upcoming walks, and I add extra walks on every so often. And you can find all the details there about what the walk involves. You can book there as well. And also gradually I'm going to start putting on there as well more little snippets of local history, which maybe I don't have time for on the walks as well. So people can see a little bit more on there with that as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Philippa.
Thank you for listening to NUN Local, and do subscribe at nunlocal.news to get every episode out on the first of every month for more hyperlocal Netherthorpe, Upperthorpe and Neepsend news. NUN Local is a project of Scribble and Bloom, a social enterprise created to encourage self-expression as a way to improve lives. Find out more about Scribble and Bloom Community Interest Company and its other projects, including zine-making workshops and easy-read translations, at scribbleandbloom.org.uk.